Next step, what we're going to do is the applique for Bailey's stockings. And this is just regular sewing machine zigzag applique that I'm going to show you. So we'll get started. This is her fabric that I quilted, just like I did Tyler's. I quilted hers with the stipple stitch pattern. And I folded it in half, and so it's got the quilting on both sides because it's going to be the front and the back of the stockings. So that one's Bailey's, this one's going to be Carter's, and I just laid the pattern down, drew around it, and then cut it out. And so I did the same thing here, just drew around it, and now I need to cut it out. And so, well, I'll cut it out in a second. What we're going to do to get our applique ready, okay, you just take your applique pieces, and this is one of the blocks from the quilt that we did for Bailey that she's using to decorate with, and we wanted the stockings to match the quilt. It has the pattern pieces already kind of separated and all, and it has like these little overlap areas that you draw off onto the fusible webbing. And you can use any kind of fusible webbing as long as it's sewable. There's Wonder Under. There is Heat and Bond. You just want to make sure you get the sewable. This, I'm using the Steam-A-Seam 2 Light. And you just lay it on here and just draw each of the pattern pieces. Now you want to separate them. So you would draw the globe in one area here, and then you would move it and draw like the two pieces for her hat, you know, so you separate all of the pieces. So they're all separated out. Then you iron it to the back of your applique pieces and then cut them out. And when you purchase the Steam-A-Seam, it has instructions on how to use it and all that comes with it. So, now we're going to come over here. I've got Carter's done, and he wanted the little penguin. And so what I do, I'm on the ironing board, and I have this pressing mat, and I just build the applique design on this pressing mat. And so I've cut out all the pieces, peeled the paper away, laid them all down, and then you iron it, and it doesn't stick to the pressing mat. All the pieces stick to themselves, but they don't stick, they just peel off of this pressing mat when you're done. And so now I have it all as one piece, and so I can place it on my stocking when I get ready. So what I'm going to do is I'll cut out my stocking, and I'll get this ironed onto it, and then we'll go to the sewing machine, and I'll show you how to stitch around all of it. Okay, so we're ready to start sewing. So I was just going to kind of show you how I set up my machine for applique. First, I'm using an open toe applique foot, so I can see where I'm going. And this one, if any of you Bernina ladies, if you have the bigger machines that have that 9mm stitch width, I actually use the 5mm applique foot. It's a little bit narrower in there, and it just kind of helps support my stitches a little bit better. So I use just a regular 20 open toe foot. Then on my machine, I'm going to choose the zigzag stitch. And I have my machine programmed so that it's ready to do this applique. So I have the stitch width saved at a 2.0 and the stitch length at the 0.80. And this is the zigzag applique. The girls over at Sister Scraps, they call it the Kelowna stitch, and I think they kind of came up with this technique and shared it with all of us. And so, so it's a 2.0 width and a 0.8 length. And then I use one of my other stitches as my tie-off stitch. So what I'm going to do is choose that number 3 stitch. That's actually an overcast stitch. But what I do, the Berninas have a memory, a programmable memory. I have shortened the stitch length down to 0.2, and I've moved my needle position over a couple of notches, and it is programmed that way. It's saved that way. And most of the Berninas will let you do that. So I can just bounce back and forth. So the zigzag is my applique stitch, and then that number 3 stitch is my tie off. On a lot of the newer Brothers and Baby locks, y'all just have a tie off button that's a little indicated with a little circle, and you can just use that button to tie off. But I like doing this stitch because I can actually move that needle position over, and it's tying off in the same hole that my zigzag stitch is going into. And I've also loosened my top tension so that that top thread pulls around to the back side. So we'll get set up here and we'll start sewing here in a second. Okay, when you get ready to start stitching, I am not using any stabilizer because I'm going through the batting and the piece of fabric and then the layers. If you were just sewing on one layer of cotton fabric, you might need to use a lightweight tearaway stabilizer. But since I have the batting in here in my stocking, I'm not using any stabilizer up underneath there. But before you begin, you need to kind of get a plan. When you're appliquing, my chair keeps rolling. When you applique, you want to start at the background, at the piece that's the farthest on the bottom, and then start working your way up. So when I'm looking at this, the globe, the blue piece, is on the bottom. So I'm going to do that first. Then I'm going to do the red part of the base because it's underneath the white and it's underneath the black. Then I'll do the black, then I'll do the white, and then I can start building on my penguin. So I look at the pieces and I could do the green here, the 2 holly leaves, the green in his little feet because that's the same color thread. Then I would do the berry. No, I like to kind of figure it out and have less color changes, so I would do the black on the penguin, then the white, then the red scarf, and that's when I would do the red berry, and then his hat, and then the top, and then the candy cane. So that's kind of my plan. So I'm going to start from the background and work up. So I'm going to do the blue globe first. You always have your applique piece to your left, or I do at least. I'm right-handed, but I always have my applique piece to my left, on my left side, and I use the freehand system. When I'm going to start turning and pivoting, I'm going to use that freehand system, that knee, that when I push that over with my knee, it lowers the pressure foot down. I can push it with my knee, and it raises the pressure foot up. I also have my needle engaged to stop down in the fabric every time. And when I'm using this freehand system, shoot down there, you can see my little house shoes, I run the foot controller with my left foot so that I can do this freehand system with my right knee. So that way I'm not trying to do, if I had the foot controller scooted over here, I'd be trying to do both things with one foot. And so I always run my machine with my left foot, and I use my right leg to do the freehand. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of have to reach in front of you a little bit. First, I'm going to go to my tie-off stitch. So I want it lined up so that my needle is right on the edge of that blue piece, and I lay my hands on that little thread tail. I'm going to take a few little stitches, foot controller's unplugged, and just let it tie off. Then I bounce to that zigzag stitch, and then I'm going to start around my globe. And see how, are you zoomed in good? Mm-hmm. See how when the needle swings over to the right, it's going right off the edge, and then it swings back into it. And it's just that little tiny zigzag stitch. Now, I'm going around this circle, okay? On the globe, every time I turn and pivot, my needle is going to be out in the background fabric in my stocking, because all of this is an outside curve. And I kind of use the toe on my foot as a guide. I want this fabric that's right in front of that needle parallel with that toe. So as I work around, as soon as the fabric isn't parallel anymore, I can turn and pivot just a little bit. And on this big a circle, you can kind of what I call drive. So you can kind of, slowly turn your fabric. You do not want to do that on this tight of a circle, like on his hat right here, because you can't do that smoothly. Your stitch won't look smooth. But because this is a big circle, I can kind of, as I'm going, kind of turn my fabric a little bit. And you don't want to get in a big hurry when you're appliquing. The slower you go, the more consistent you are, the better your stitch will be. So every time I turn and pivot, the needle's going to be on the outside. So I'll finish doing this, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to do these inside corners on the base down there. Okay, I'm almost to the end of the globe here, and so when I get down there to the bottom where it meets the snow, I stop with my needle on the outside there, and then I'm going to choose that tie-off stitch, let it tie off 3 or 4 stitches, and then I don't use a scissor cutter. I just raise the needle up, raise the presser foot up, and then when I cut that thread tail on the back, don't cut it right up next to your fabric. Leave a good 1/2 inch or so there, so you don't want to cut it too close. Okay, now I got to rethread. Okay, so I'm ready to do the red part, and I've got my needle set. I'm going to do a few tie-off stitches, bounce to my zigzag stitch, and I'm going to come up on this inside point right here. So because that is an inside point, when I turn and pivot, now my needle is going to be on the inside. So see, it's over here to the left. So it's on the inside of the applique fabric, and then I turn and pivot, get that fabric going straight with my foot again, and then come down. So if it's outside curves or points, you stop with your needle on the outside. When it's an inside, you stop with your needle on the inside. I'm going to tie off there. Sit up. And then I do like to clip my threads in between each section when I'm moving around, because I don't want those bobbin threads up underneath there, because they can get kind of hung up on your feed dogs and all. So now I'm going to do this side of the base. So I've got to get my needle lined up, take those tie-off stitches, and then I just kind of try to look ahead. So okay, I'm going to go straight here. This is going to be an inside point, and then these are going to be outside curves right there. So get it lined up, come up to that point again, and it's an inside point. Stop with my needle on the inside, turn and pivot. And I'm going to take one stitch, I'm going to stop with the needle on the inside again, and then kind of readjust again. And then start going around this curve, and if I need to turn and pivot, this is going to be an outside curve. And there. And sometimes you just have to do one stitch at a time. Tie off there. I've got to rethread, and I'm going to go ahead and do the white because I want to show you how to do all these little up and downs around that. So I'm going to thread back up with white, and then we'll be back. I've started doing the white, so I've done this part here, and that was just going straight. I stopped here at his foot, cut my thread, started again here on this side, and now I am to this corner here. And I'm stopping with my needle on the outside, and this is a pretty sharp corner, so what I'm going to do is turn and pivot kind of like 45 degrees, take a stitch, stop with my needle on the outside again, turn another 45 or so, take another stitch, and then come on around. You just kind of ooze yourself around that sharp corner. Now I'm going to come down and I'm going to kind of plan ahead. This is going to be kind of inside curve right here. So if I need to turn and pivot, I'll stop with my needle on the inside. See, I'm going to stop right there. It may be kind of hard to see that white against that off-white background there. Stop with my needle on the inside, turn and pivot a little bit more. Now I'm coming up. This part of the curve is going to be an outside curve. So here, I'll stop with my needle on the outside. Now you can see it better when it's on the red. Okay, so that's outside curve. This is going to be an outside curve right there, but now I'm coming up on inside curves. Put one more there. Inside, needle's on the inside. And see that if you go slow and you just take it stitch by stitch, it looks a whole lot smoother. This is going to be an outside curve down here at the bottom. And I'm just pumping that foot controller, making it go kind of one stitch at a time, all on the outside. Now this, I'm going to take one more stitch. This is inside. This flannel's kind of rattling out a little bit on me. Inside. I'm going to take one more inside there. Now the bottom of this is going to be an outside, going all the way around this. One stitch at a time. I don't want to go too fast. I know this may be kind of boring watching this. Okay, inside, inside, one more inside here, and then the rest of this kind of right in that area is going to be an outside. You got the idea for this. Okay, so I'm going to finish doing this white, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how to do this little holly, since it has some points right there. So we'll come back. Okay, I'm going to do this holly leaf right here. There's two of them, but this one is the one on bottom, so that's the one I need to do first. So I'm going to start here. Do some tie-off stitches. This part is all going to be an inside curve going around that part of the leaf. Until I get to that point. Okay, what I'm going to do at that point, I'm going to take one more stitch. I'm at the point. I'm going to turn and pivot that 45 degree. Take one stitch, stop with the needle on the outside again. Pivot another 45 degree and go around it. Come up to this point. Needle at the point. Take about 45 degree. One stitch. Needle on the outside. Come around it. So I just kind of take like 2 or 3 stitches at that point. I'm going to come up to this one. I need to turn and pivot here, get to that point, 45, one stitch, needle on the outside again, and then come to the inside. I actually like doing applique. It's kind of like building a puzzle to me, because you're kind of building it, and as you lay the stitches down, it just kind of helps, I don't know, makes it look more finished. Okay, outside point, 45 degree, one more stitch, outside, come on down, and And then tie off when I get to the bottom. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is just, I think what we'll do is just set up the camera and just kind of, you can watch me do the rest of it. And if you're bored, you can stop watching right now, but I'm just going to kind of finish doing it. Maybe. We'll see how late it gets tonight, but we'll do that. don't know what color to do the candy cane, because it's supposed to look like a cookie, and so part of it's brown, but then this part's white. I don't know what to do. I think I'm going to do white. Okay, and what I'm going to do on the candy cane, because it's a littler piece, I'm going to tie off, and then when I go to my zigzag, instead of having my width at 2, I'm going to take it down to about 1.5. Whoops, wrong one. That's the length. Go back down. Width. Take my width down to about 1.5, I think. Yeah. It's a smaller piece. That looks okay. Alright, so it's done. So next video I'm going to show you how I'm going to do Tyler's stockings, and they're going to be done applique with the embroidery machine. So I'll show you that next time.